Hello again, Steve here with a few thoughts on perhaps how we can live life just a little more spark. I know this may sound counterintuitive, but the concept is to live like we're already dead. I know that makes no sense whatsoever, but I've often thought, we've heard these sayings, like if you were given if you had cancer or something like that, and you were said you only have the doctor said you got 3 months to live, like how would we live? You know, I remember Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations talked about how if you're only given a few days to live, how would you live? And of course, most people say, well, you know, tell people what I really think and so on. And his point was, well, why don't we live like that? Because that's all we have is a few days. I mean, in eternity, whether it's 3 days or 3,000, what difference does it really make? But taking it a step further, even, because that's if you're going to die, right? Take it a step further, a couple of steps further to say, I'm already dead, basically. How does that look like? Now, where does this come from? Well, I may mention in a few videos here that I've been a bit of a fan of Keith Richards, not for his lifestyle so much, just for the way he always had kind of an admiration for a guy who just doesn't seem to give a fuck. But at the end of the day, he really does. He really has an exquisite attention on certain subtleties and a very deep love for certain things. Very hard worker as well. But he runs across in this story, his story in the book he wrote called Life. It is full of just so many almost hilarious, sublimely interesting characters that he ran into. There's this one guy who was a survivor of the Holocaust. He was from Poland, I think, originally, and he was a larger than life character. He dressed in the most ridiculous costumes. I mean, like pink flowery shirts and god awful pants with cowboy boots pulled up over the top and a weird hat and stuff. Just outrageous. And he was just, I mean, party animal, lived on the edge of oblivion, basically, and just enjoyment. The guy was just completely outrageous. I mean, Keith Richards had a hard time keeping up with this guy, for that matter. But he made the point, and Keith Richards remembered. He said, because Keith was almost wondering, like, how the hell can you live like that? And he basically said, well, I'm already dead. And the story that Keith remembered him relaying was quite profound. I mean, here was a guy as a young boy in Poland. He saw his own grandfather marched out in the center of the town square and shot in the head, just because he was the leader of that Jewish community. And all of his immediate family, of something like 38, were killed except for him and one other relative who was out of the country. So he was the only one who survived, who was in Poland, and he basically had escaped from this work camp and got into Russia, and actually went to a gulag in Russia, if you can believe it, survived that. An amazing story. So he said, you know what, I'm already dead. I might as well, just, what the hell? What does it matter? I've already run my course in life. And as a result, he's this very, very memorable guy. May not have been living a lifestyle that most people were interested in, but just didn't give a shit. And Keith Richards, of all people, said that he learned a lesson from this guy of how not to give a shit what other people think of you. I mean, you already would have thought that Keith Richards would know that. But, there's always another guy who's doing it a bit better. And, this guy was like Keith Richards on steroids, I guess. And of course, Keith Richards was already on everything else. Once again, not necessarily a lifestyle that most people want to gravitate towards, but I think the message is very strong. The message being, live life. If you're going to live. Life is for the living, right? And it's kind of an odd thing to say, but living like we're already dead? I mean, the point being that nobody who's dead probably gives a shit, right? About what anybody else thinks of them. I mean, you can be rotting, stinking on the ground, and you don't seem to care. Well, if we're already dead in terms of what other people think of us, then we can be ourselves, right? I think there's something to be said for that. It's rather metaphorical. It's rather roundabout. It's rather a little bit different. But sometimes we have to break up our way of thinking and look at things from a different angle, I would say, in order to be true to ourselves. And I think that's a good message. Live like we're dying, or perhaps live like we're already dead. Why are you acting like that? Because I'm already dead, you know. And of course, the other thing is, the reality is we're all going to end up there anyway. So, if that is our ultimate destination, it seems like, that we know of anyway. So, I don't know, why not act like we already are, and then we don't have to give a shit about what other people think of us, or conventions, or limiting ways of thinking, and all this sort of stuff. It's like, poof, all the boundaries come off, because there's like, whatever anybody says or thinks of us or whatever doesn't matter anymore, right? So bang, we're there. So anyways, yeah, just a few thoughts on improving the quality of our lives, things that come across my mind that are helpful for me in a way of looking at things, and maybe are helpful for somebody else. If what I said, made a difference in one person's life, heck, that would be more than worth it. So take it for what they are, these little comments, and if they're helpful, I am very happy for that. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon.